General response video to yeah, just all the irrationalists, right? Okay, so you got Fred, you got Antikondavad, Professor Anton. I guess we'll just deal with those three. They make the most videos, and so Professor Anton is arguing from the perspective that, oh, look, we're here, so therefore we must be here for a reason. This ambiguity about the mission statement of the universe itself. That until somebody provides him a blueprint of, how the universe just farts, and how it just happens to do this, creating of matter thing, you're going to have to demonstrate that to him. You're going to have to give him that drawing before he's going to accept that we're just fungus growing on Earth. Just like emeralds or rubies or some other function, stalagmites, stalactites. Somehow we have to be justified. We're too special to be just explained as a chemical phenomenon that happened because circumstances permitted it to happen. That's not good enough. It's almost like somebody saying, well, the rainbows are so pretty, therefore they must be magical. Why aren't rainbows ugly? Yeah, that's, not recognizing that our whole sense of aesthetics is based on the world that is, not the world that isn't. So again, you can almost go back to these religious arguments where everything is just so perfect and it couldn't happen if it was, everything didn't be just right. All the conditions have to be just right. Well, obviously, the conditions were just right, and that's what permitted the chemistry to do this thing that seems rather improbable or unlikely. But there's nothing that caused that. It just turns out that way. That's right. Because that's the rules of the end game. Alright, so anyway, then we got the Fred. I'm going to play a little bit of his video. And he's talking about this idea of being able to, our brains being, he's not saying it this way, but yeah, our brains are just tools provided by evolution because they gave us survival advantage. And so he's talking about our capacity to visualize future scenarios and basically do what I talk about often, which is evaluate risk and understand, cost to benefit analysis kind of thing in terms of projecting and seeing, predicting outcomes, and then being able to modify your behavior to modify the outcome. So instead of living in this moment, you're living in the future moment, and you're seeing what you can change now to change something later. And yeah, this is a really nice functional capacity. Obviously it has obvious survival advantages, but he's talking about it as if it's a really specific, and that it's somehow your visualizations, the more accurate they are, the more that's conducive to survival or reproductivity. And that's the joke, because no, the evidence is exactly the opposite. People who get it wrong are the ones who have children. People who don't see their children dying in a hospital somewhere, ahead of time, recognizing that their kids are going to be mortal, that their kids are maybe going to be alcoholics, that their kids are going to be born disabled. It is this huge lack of vision that makes it possible for people to accept this risk equation, to project, to cause this thing to happen, because they completely skew and pervert the analysis, the vision of the probable futures. They get the probabilities way wrong, way inaccurate in terms of understanding the real risk. And I talked about that a little bit in a previous video, but yeah, this is a phenomenon we already know about, that human beings are really bad at getting those kind of statistics correct in their intuition. Their intuition is often way off. And clearly, in society of the last 100 or so years, or even longer, survivability has very little to do with the competence of parents. Parents can be incredibly incompetent, and the village will raise the child. The village will keep it alive. The village doesn't let kids starve to death in the streets anymore. not generally speaking. And even in the dark past, there was some effort made by at least segments of the population to do something about those kind of problems. There were volunteer kind of organizations and orphanages and all kinds of stuff that people did even without government's help to help people, to help kids survive. So it's just false to say there's some evolutionary mechanism taking place. In the last couple of 100 years, evolution has been broken. Even before Darwin, we had already pretty substantially broken a lot of the rules of evolution, and we had cheated it substantially in terms of surgeries and doing all kinds of other things to mitigate against the defects in genetic code. And so we were propagating defects all over the place, and certainly there's a huge amount of cognitive defects in people who are born today. I mean, you're more likely to be born to somebody with cognitive defects than not. The people who landed us on the moon are not the people who are breeding. The people who are doing anything really truly productive in society or innovative or who have their philosophical brain ticking at 100% are not the people breeding. It is the dumbest and the poorest calculators of risk, the ones who have the 50 grand in credit card debt kind of asshole who are producing the next generation. So that's just a canard to project this idea that there's some advancement in human capacity to see the future. If anything, they're becoming dumber, blinder, poorer and poorer at doing risk evaluations and doing rational projections of future consequences. Their projections are terrible, and that's why the world is the shithole it is in. It's because of how horrible they are at doing these rational equations. Alright, so we also want to get to Anaconda. So Anaconda is still obsessed with this idea of guilt and somehow the immutability of our nature, and that somehow we can't become more elegant or graceful, or we can't learn some kind of new dance step. And yeah, it's just, I mean, you could just even say it that simply, learn a new dance step. I mean, it's just we can learn all kinds of new behaviors. We are completely, just as we can eat all kinds of different things, we can behave all kinds of different ways and for all kinds of different reasons and passions and all that kind of stuff. So it's just the silliest of notions that there's something called generic human nature in the first place, beyond the fact that we are hungry, for food, and we have some sort of sexual appetite, and we have some sort of ego competitive nature. Most people have some bit of competition nature in them. Yeah, beyond those three elements, the ego, food, and sex, yeah, the rest of it is completely mutable, and changeable and shapeable. And certainly shapeable in terms of how we maturate children, which is the argument he's just ignoring. Again, it's not so much about what you can do about yourself, it's what you project into the next generation. It's what you impose in terms of programming and brainwashing. And so many arguments don't have anything to do with, it's like cigarette smokers. We could grandfather them out instead of punishing them. It would be so much more sensible, right? Just make a full prohibition against somebody starting smoking, but there's no reason to persecute the people who currently smoke. And many of the people who currently smoke would be all for it, and they'd say, yeah, smoking was a mistake, I'm an addict, and yeah, let's not make any more addicts. But, please, 1,000% taxes is nonsense. But anyway, throw that in just because it's one of my political agendae. But it's just revealing in terms of this negative incentives. But anyway, again, I don't want to argue on Anaconda. If he's not going to be reasonable and accept some sort of moderation on this guilt complex obsession he has, that I just think is nonsensical. He can't show me how it's at all manifested negatively in the human condition. the exact opposite is the truth. I can point to every asshole in the world, and I'll be pointing to somebody who is not guilt-ridden. Okay, so it's idiotic to blame guilt for the dysfunction of the human society. It's exactly the opposite. It's oxymoronically incorrect. It is so preposterously wrong to blame guilt as a negative function. It's a positive function, if anything, and I would say it's an irrelevant function in the sense that you don't need to be motivated by it anyway. All you need is rational perception. All you need is cognitive ability. You can want something, you can indulge something, and you can still know it's frivolous or stupid. You can still enjoy it, even if you know it's fake. We know movies are fake. We know they're actors. We know there's stages and lights and grips and all kinds of other bullshit. But we fool ourselves and we watch the movie and we say, hey, yeah, okay. Even though we know it's fake. We lose ourselves in it as if it's happening, as if it's a real story. There's no crime in that. There's no difficulty in that. And we can do the same thing with the circumstances of, like, say, the burden of having a law that says you can't kill other people. It's not a horrible burden. I mean, yeah, I would like to just go out and whack the assholes. Sure would make life easier if we just whack them. You know, just do them, just get them the fuck out of the way. So, damn, it's, you know, shucks, there's a law against it. But I guess the bright side is there's a law against it, so I don't get whacked, you know, because I'm certainly probably on somebody's asshole list. So anyway, but yeah, you know, no point in arguing that. But you know, it is tangentially related to this whole idea of what it is to be human, and recognizing that what we are is poorly designed survival machines, and that intelligence reveals to us the poorness of the design in many respects, and so we moderate, we compensate for those design flaws and attempt to become more elegant in how we dance, the dance of life. And that's not difficult. It's not impossible. It's not some kind of insidious, horrid torture to be a more elegant human being. So it's just a canard to argue that we can't do that. And that's a terrible burden to suggest people should try to do that. It's just silly to say it's just awful to expect doctors to wash their hands or some kind of shit like that because it's not their nature to do it. Nonsense. Just nonsense. It's a minor burden, minor inconvenience for a huge social benefit. It's just a nonsensical argument. Then to Professor Anton, you know, look, are you going to wait for the Holy Grail of somebody to give you the blueprint? I'm telling you, you're going to be very disappointed when the day shows up and some guy gives you the blueprint, shows you the quanta, shows you the mechanics of it, how exactly it works, all the subatomic elements, and how this chain reaction of existence took place, and the fact that we are just a byproduct. Okay, we're the tough skin on the bottom of the hoof or something. We're just we're not even that. We're just the fungus growing on it. We're just the yeah. You know, we were in the realm of possibility and it happened. And it's really interestingly bizarre. It's the strangest chemistry in the universe, probably. But so what? It doesn't make it magical. And it doesn't change the fact that we know what built it. We know the mechanism. And it's just the remnants, the residue of a preposterously insidious 4 billion year long gladiator war. Just an insidious, idiotic battle for a notion of survivability that was not built on deserve, or high standards, our elegance, our brilliance, our intelligence, our sensible. It was building machines that were quite literally, you know, teeth and anus. and not much else. Just, sharks. Sharks are probably the highest form of life that ever evolved in the ocean, right? I mean, outside of, like, maybe octopuses. But that's it. It obviously doesn't go anywhere. Evolution often doesn't go anywhere. Let's say if we could run evolution over and over and over again, you may have to do a zillion permutations of evolution to create something again like a mammal, because it might be very it might require very nuanced circumstances to create something that ends up with capacities as obtuse, in terms of their real function, as cognitive intelligence and the capacity to reflect on life and all of this other stuff. These are byproducts of the real kernel of usefulness, which was a minor improvement in our behavior, and yet it gave us the capacity to do this language thing and build reservoirs of knowledge, and even just that, doing the reservoirs of knowledge outside of our own brain thing. Without that, we're dumb animals. Okay, so I'll play a little bit of this Fred video, but I think I've already made the point, but I'll just let you hear some of it so you can verify that he's just wrong in this projecting some sort of positive evolution. Most evolution is decidedly negative nowadays.
Amongst us who are best able to simulate the future by imagining themselves living in it, if they just got better and better at that. So we or another organism like us might evolve towards a state where it can simulate the future perfectly. So the future holds no mystery to them, and potentially even the future of their offspring.
Yeah, well, I mean, to some vague way, we have some of that capability, right? I mean, in broad strokes, we have it. I mean, we know it is decidedly not going to work. So we can point to things that won't work. Unsustainable population growth, preposterous deficit spending, things that don't have any resolution except some sort of catastrophe. You can't resolve them without some sort of unpleasant resolution. So yeah, we can project those big picture kind of things. We know that if you dump the dioxin in the drinking water, that nothing good is going to happen because of that. So even without a precise ability to do it, people don't even care. I mean, it seems to be quite obvious that if they had the ability to project these different futures and understand all the consequences, that they still might do a lot of insidious things, as long as it happens in someone else's backyard. As long as Fukushima is over there, it's all okay. It's not a big deal. And as long as it's not in their backyard, who cares? And there's an awful lot of that happening right now. So this idea that if people could see the real consequences, and we can see them now. If people want to see the real consequences, they can see it. They can go look at China. They can go find out statistics on the average person's life and how they're living. They can understand what they're exploiting and how they're exploiting it. They can understand the resource depletion in Africa. They can understand all this stuff. They can understand the war in Iraq if they care to. And they can understand the mechanisms that are feeding that and feeding on that. But they don't care to. So I think even more explicit knowledge isn't what's needed. What's needed is a give a damn. Some sort of appreciation that you don't win by forcing somebody else to lose. And that's what's missing here. People don't need better binoculars. They need a better soul. They need a better... The eyes looking through the binoculars need to be improved. The brain behind it, so to speak. The humans, their character sucks. So I don't think it's our vision that's broken. It's our character.
Because simulating the future of your offspring brings reproductive advantage, doesn't it? It brings genetic advantage.
Yeah, well, you have to show that to me, right? I mean, realistically, show me in the world where people are doing that, where people are really appreciating the expensive college, the this, the that, all these, projecting any kind of realistic capacity to ever get their kids to that future. The average kid in Chicago, in this country, doesn't graduate high school. You think their parents had some huge vision or something? They don't got any vision. They had no clue when they had the kids, and they still have no clue.
I'm alive today not just because I've done reasonably intelligent things or not too many stupid things, but also because my ancestors,
No, you're alive because your ancestors bred. That's right. And they might have bred in totally irresponsible ways, and there might have been huge attrition. Your brother died, right, of polio. So let's not talk about the reason why you exist is because we know what it takes to get a woman pregnant. That doesn't take much at all. Now, it obviously takes some kind of compromise to her physical health, so she can't have a whole bunch of babies unless she's got some kind of infrastructure to keep her going. Something's got to be feeding her, at minimum. But yeah, we know it doesn't take any kind of brilliance to have a baby. It's not something you do because you're clever and smart and responsible. It's something you can do if you're not clever and not smart and not responsible. It's a lot easier to do it if you're dumb than if you're smart. Because the smarter you are, the more aware of the risk you're going to be, the more scared of the risk you're going to be, and the more apprehensive you're going to be about stepping into it until you can kind of guarantee that, I don't want an autistic kid and I don't want a retarded kid, so yeah, I got to get the wife to quit drinking before we get pregnant and blah, blah, blah. That's what the responsible, thoughtful person is going to do, and every one of those thoughts is going to be thoughts that are going to discourage the act. Even the idea of saying, let's put it off until we have some money in the bank. Well, the longer you wait, the more likely it is you won't have a kid. So that's going to limit the number. If you wait till your late 30s, you're only going to have one kid on average. That's going to be the majority of people who have one kid have it because they have it late.
mother and father and my grandmother and grandfather and so on, they also did at least enough to prepare the ground 2 generations hence.
Yeah, well, at least enough is just a silly idea, right? Because at least enough is the worst case scenario. There's people right now in Africa, they did at least enough. They have a cardboard box and they have a garbage dump to go pick food out of. And that's all they need to have 8 kids. So, as long as the UN keeps showing up with the bags of rice once a week, yeah, they'll keep that. They'll declare that successful reproduction. But let's not think that these people did anything clever or wise or intelligent or reasonable or foresighted. They were the exact opposite. They were profoundly ignorant of risk and consequences.
So maybe if we develop a consciousness which could look that far into the future, simulate the future perfectly, what would that be like?
Yeah, well, we're not advancing to that anyway as biological mechanisms, but science can give us tools that will enable us to do that in a computer to model these things for us, maybe. So yeah, we could run the computer model. We could just push in our genetic code, put in our circumstances, and the computer will give us a statistical analysis of what the likelihood of our kid getting to be 50 years old without horror. Yeah. Yeah, but a computer can do that for us and can then give us reason to say maybe this isn't a very good idea.
I think it would still be ambiguous. I think the ambiguity would be even stronger.
Well, see that statement right there. So here we have more knowledge about how to perfect our playing of the game. So it's like you are given analysis of what flipper to use on the pinball machine, how exactly to flip the ball, what target to hit. You're giving all the information about the optimum results. You will get the most points if you do this flipper maneuver, hit that target. And he's saying now it's more ambiguous. You're given the information that tells you how to maximize your scoring potential, and he calls that more ambiguous. Do you see the nonsense in this? This is just mumbo jumbo. He's just pulling this shit out of his ass. It doesn't. This is mush, absolutely mush, in defense of some sort of notion of advancement and that we can conquer the game or that we can blah blah blah, and it's absolute mush.
Because the future is a blinding mirage, as I keep quoting from.
Yeah, exactly. So even when he says we know the future, we know all the possibilities, all the probabilities, all the potential outcomes, we can see that we can mathematically detail exactly how the pool balls will end up and how you can put your ball in and give your opponent the worst possible position to shoot from. We've given you exactly detailed the map for it. It's right there. And here he is saying it's a fog. It's a mystery. We don't. Ooh, no. Amazing.
Stephen Brzezinski book, which I really like, called The Rules of Chaos. But we'd still be living in ambiguity, wouldn't we? Because the further you look into the future, the further you're able to simulate the future, the more possibilities, the more of a
Well, see, even that is sort of a canard, right? Because we know how buildings are built. They're built on a foundation, so it's back to this fundamentalism. So you start narrowing the future. The more you detail what effects you're going to have in the world and what are going to be the fundamental causes for the next generation, the more you narrow the possibilities. It gets narrow and narrower and narrower and narrower, and you're heading for an end point gets more and more resolutable. So again, but you didn't, and when you said we can do this viewing into the future, you didn't put some limit on it like, okay, you can only see one generation or two generations or three generations. But the point is that we know there's no generational potential for the dioxin into the drinking water. We know that's just not a good idea. The nuclear power plant on the earthquake fault, yeah, not a good idea. Gotta do better than that. We know the gotta do better thans, and there's a big ton of those, and we're not paying any attention to them. And because people like you just keep arguing in defense of the sloppiness in which people are living. Like I said, we see enough right now, and people aren't paying any attention. They're stepping right over the danger signs, right over the skull and crossbones. The warnings are all over the place. The signage is all over the place. Undertow. And they're just walking right into it. Because most of the time they're not walking with their legs. They're walking with somebody else's risk. Somebody else is being put in jeopardy, and that's why they're doing it. They're throwing their damn kids into the fucking undertow. Because they can get a shiny nickel for it of ego gratification. So, yeah, fuck you. You people just suck. So anyway, fuck the irrationalists. Until zombie-like anyway. Controllably zombie-like. Fuck them until they're controllable zombies. Net minimum. Maximum. Export them into, give them a free trip into space. Yeah, let's all buy them a ticket to space. That would be a good idea. Let's shoot them into space. Yeah, they'll go for that. It'll be like the Nazis and the Jews. They're just, hey, we're going to give you a free space ride. Yeah, you'll love it. You can do all your phantasmagorical bibbly babbly boo. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not, it's got, we'll have a swimming pool on the spaceship. Sure, we'll have a swimming pool and a track to run around in. Yeah, it's a retirement camp. Yeah. No, it's not a concentration camp. No, it's retirement ship. Yeah, retirement ship. Yeah, it'd be a nice retirement for you phantasmagoricals. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, I'm going for this one.